Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host, who, on discovering his adopted home of Calgary was the birthplace of five-pin bowling, set in motion a plan to endear himself to his new neighbours and friends, and became the proud inventor of 2.5-pin bowling. My friend and yours, Dr. Luke Gledall. How are you doing today, Luke?
Good. Is it 5-pin or is it 6-pin?
I believe. Well, I mean, not being a native, there may be so many variations in Calgary, but Wikipedia mentioned 5-pin, but I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, I think I've played a variant of that. Anyway, I know what you mean. I'm very well. How are you?
We know you've played a variant because you invented 2.5-pin bowling. You're the toast of Calgs as a result. I'm good, thank you. Yes, I'm good. I'm well. Up in Scotland for another little brief jaunt. So it's colder, it's darker. Those things are noticeable, but it's nice to see some actual real people. That's a nice thing. So yeah, generally fairly buoyant.
Do we seem to have less exhilarating games when you're north of the border? Or is it just that we have it all? It's largely that we don't particularly have exhilarating games, and then it's just fallen that you're visiting your family.
It's a good, it's interesting. I knew this one was going to go to penalties because I was hoping that, it's a bit of an intrusion into the day. We sort of mentioned last week the nature of the League Cup being, fairly low on everybody's priority list, particularly this season. So, of course, we were going to get the full 90 minutes with nothing and then a little added extra just to take a little bit more time. But I don't know. It's interesting. We could probably look back statistic wise and see whether when I'm in Scotland, it's always bad.
I wonder so. Yes, it was yes. Anyway, we can talk about this when we get on to talk about the game. But that is not the structure of Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. But as it's time to discuss.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
So we're still sort of technically we were pre-season until today. We're now in season, I guess. But that does mean there's bits of news coming through sort of fairly thick and fast. Do you have anything in particular you'd like to talk about first out of the things that have happened this week, Luke?
Let's talk about the fun day of double signings, shall we?
Yeah, it's a nice place to start, isn't it? Mm-hmm. One a complete surprise, and the other the opposite of that, because we were just waiting for when it would happen. But yeah, we signed Elias Kachunga on a free transfer for a year, I believe. Trumpy bum, windy ass, the man himself for 2 years.
With an option of a third, yeah.
With an option of a third. Thoughts?
I guess it's interesting with Kachunga. Completely came out of left field. I think there were a few people or ITK who thought that this was something long confirmed and we were just waiting to kind of pull it out of the hat, so to speak.
Interesting.
But that was a very small amount of people, and interestingly enough, that Kachunga kind of came up in the rumor mill, and people have said, including some of our reported famed local reporters in Dom House, and said he's not one who's on Wednesday's radar.
Oh right. Yeah.
So
they must love when they make those declarative statements and then. And then life shows up to rub their noses in their mistakes. I do sort of vaguely remember his name sort of popping up at one stage. He's a player.
He is.
I've always. Thank you.
I second that motion.
I've been fairly admiring of him. I don't, without knowing a huge amount, but just knowing when he's played against us, he's been a threat.
Yes.
And I thought it was interesting. So I believe he mostly sort of plays right wing. Mm-hmm. But then watching, as you have to do, the goals videos to sort of make yourself excited and hype up a player beyond any reasonable expectations. Watching all of his goals for for Huddersfield. Seems like a mixture. Sometimes he does seem to play through the middle. And to be honest, I thought watching and I do mean this is praise from me. I have to say this before, but it reminds me a little bit of Marcus Tudgay.
Okay. I like how you had to preface. You have to preface all nice comments with "this is praise," by the way.
Well, I think Tudgay was a bit of a divisive figure at times. But I think certainly not a natural goal scorer, but through kind of nous and hard work, was able to have a few seasons where he really pulled together a very decent goal tally. Mm-hmm. And Kachunga, he got 13 goals the season that Huddersfield got promoted.
Yes, yeah.
And that was in a team that went up with negative goal difference. So those are hard-won goals. But he scores a lot with his head. He's not... I think when you still think about a winger that gets maybe 10 goals a season, I think you naturally think, someone that's like cutting in and beaming in distance. But yeah, looking at the goals he scored, a lot of them are neat little finishes where he's ghosted into the box and he's won a header and winning headers at corners as well.
Yes.
So
I guess that's a really interesting comparison, because I did feel that about Tudgay, that he did have a certain amount of an understated prowess in the air because of how slight he was as a player. He was a real, diving little meerkat.
Yes.
I think we played a game, I can't even remember the season. We beat Norwich at home 3-2. I remember taking my dad, which was really sweet. So, I got to, thanks to Rich and I, we are different gravy. We are the Gravy Boys. We were previously on that gravy train. That was the Coke Zone Coca-Cola tickets, which has actually ignited, has played a fair point and fair kind of wee little hand in our friendship, I guess.
Definitely.
And the many kind of dice rolls that we have in life. We've definitely had some sliding doors moments over some Coke Zone points, haven't we, Rich?
Where would we be without Coke Zone? That is a real big question.
Me, Gwyneth Paltrow, and you, John. Anyway, sorry, let's abandon that analogy. I took my dad, so I won a free ticket. And I remember a goal that Tudgay scored, which was a bit like people compared it to, I think, a Trevor Francis, was it the UEFA Cup semi-final header?
Yes.
Was one where diving at the back stick. And it was a really fantastic goal. Not to talk too much about Marcus Tudgay, but that was the interesting thing with watching that from the highlight reels from Kachunga, is there seems to be a very kind of understated prowess with heading the ball. Nothing quite as impressive as a diving backstick header.
No, but it's more about reading the flight of the ball and getting yourself in there than it is towering above people. Because I think the similar sort of height to Tudgay, and he's probably sort of 5'9", something like that, which is not short, but it's kind of average height, and most defenders will be 5-6, maybe more inches taller than you. Mm-hmm. But it's attacking the ball, being alive and aware and things like that, and grabbing those opportunities when they come. So I'm quietly excited about that, and I also think the fact that it's a year. He's not an old player by any chalk, but he's also not a sort of spring chicken. So it's nice to not be in a position where we're kind of handing somebody on the cusp of their 30s, 3 years or whatever, and hoping for the best.
I was surprised that you said it was a year. I thought it was just going to be. I standardly think that all free transfers are 2 years.
It might well be a year with a year, if that's that's quite often a format of it. But it just felt like we weren't tying ourselves in too much, and it's putting him in a position where he's got to kind of show his worth, I think, almost from the off.
On the flip side of this, the nicety of being like, I watched these goals and 90% of them were headers. Were deft, faint headers. Were you disappointed that there wasn't the flip side of that, with like more goals from his feet, not him cutting in and beaming one into the top corner?
He seemed to score a few decent sort of efforts with his feet, but it
none of them are worldies or
no, not worldies.
7, 8 out of 10 strikes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting. As I say, I don't know. I'd be lying if I sort of said, I know tons and tons about him, but it just, obviously you look good on those goal videos. That's the whole point. It's all the good bits together. But I was quite pleased with the sort of variations that were there. I particularly liked, there was one sort of cheeky one where he scored against Norwich, and it was kind of getting between the defender and the goalkeeper and intercepting a bad pass back and just slotting it away with aplomb. But it looks like he's not like a beautiful striker of the ball, a technical striker of the ball like we see sometimes with someone like Adam Reach. But like his sort of heading prowess, it's more just getting there and being active, being interested, and trying to get on the end of things is almost half the gamble. So a pleasing surprise.
I think I had a similar thing to you, was that I've always noted and felt that he was a player of worth and a player of threat and a player that you see his name on the team sheet for the opposite team for Huddersfield and think he could do something. It's not against him. So I'm pleased we've got someone who's quick. I mean, the interesting thing is he's a winger who's seemed to be predominantly played on the wing for Huddersfield.
Yeah.
Not so much of a kind of goal threat and goal stats and assist stats. So that's something. But the interesting thing is looking at from 4 years he's been at Huddersfield. So he spent a year on loan, which was his best year with them at 13 goals.
Yeah.
In 30 odd appearances in their promotion year, against us.
Yes.
And then got up to the Premier League, played about half the games I think they had in the Premier League over 2 seasons, 1 goal. I imagine having that step up for a player of his ability, who's someone who's looked good and promising, but not exactly a world beater, perhaps, probably has affected his confidence. So I'm wondering about whether this being a second chance, a second spell, he might be rejuvenated by this move.
And so much can hang on, if he obviously not involved today, but if he can get a goal early doors, you can go on the sort of run that does sort of rejuvenate an attacking player. Just grabbing a goal or two can turn all sorts of things around. Probably improve your love life. All of a sudden the toast falls with the butter side up and things. I'm sure it's for an attacking player, those goals just make so much difference to everything. But in particular, the way you play and the confidence with which you sort of attack the game. So the other addition obviously was Windass, who with us last season, got 9 goals, 3 goals in 9 games. It would be nice if he got 9 goals in 3 games. That would be quite a record. Almost Jordan Rhodes versus Forest level figures he's pulling in there. But I'm pleased that we've sort of discussed it a little bit because this was very much on the cards and front of mind. But pleased to have him on board.
Very much so. Yeah, I think they're both quick and versatile players. That if we look at the similarities between the two signings, Windass I feel is someone we've seen more of, and we know more of who he is, and we know more of how he can be. We were talking about this last week, how he can present himself in different positions across that forward line or a forward three. Yeah. There's a lot of options, and dynamic, talented. On his day, a real handful, and on his day, someone who I think has been a game changer. Someone who's, had a few occasions of coming off the bench, and if he hasn't made a change, then he's looked a lot more lively and a lot, a different type of player to some of the ones that we have who've started the game. So I'm glad to have him in. It's interesting now. I felt like getting to the position of, I'm really glad that we got 1 signing in before.
Yes.
But now we have 2 signings. So it's to go into the season proper, whether this is the season proper or whether next week is a different kind of argument.
I think definitely after the game we can say the season proper starts next week.
The season proper start. Because I'd naturally feel that the season should start with a league game, and then you get the midweek League Cup.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like more competitive minutes. You can try some different options, but your bread and butter is obviously the league. So to be in that position, to have those players in, to now look and say we have 3 strikers is really good. Maybe some of my negativity, anxiety is making me think, who is that 4th player that's going to come in through the door? And that's someone that may take a while for a player of that quality to come through the door. But Who is the fourth striker going to be? Because I think that's going to make a telling difference to what we have. But it's starting to look like we're assembling the toolbox of strikers.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're avowedly looking, aren't we? Monk has sort of said we're still on the lookout for that guy to lead the line. I think that's the interesting thing. So it's interesting you sort of categorize them as strikers. I think a few folks online haven't, but I think they're certainly both forwards. But there may be more of that second striker sort of variety than the guy leading the line. I don't know.
Sure,
I think
that's an interesting point.
Windass to me he's got the build that, given the right coaching, he could be. I think he could lead the line on his own. I don't think you need to be massive, but you need to know how to use your body and use your energy in the right ways. And as I say, I thought with Kachunga, looking at him, he does have the tools that he could probably do the same sort of thing. So potentially they are both candidates for that role, but it's not been their bread and butter thus far in their career. So people are still some folks are still lamenting the fact that Rhodes is the only, quote unquote striker in the squad. But I agree with you. I do categorize those two guys as, if not strikers, certainly forwards. I think they're of that lineup that would they'd lead the line in one way or another.
But I think we naturally kind of think. I think I still have this affliction, and I think a lot of fans still have this affliction that in a very traditional game, with tradition, we defer to the mentality of how we think football should be played, and I think that mentality is still very much a 4-4-2 mentality amongst the fan base.
Yeah,
and I still see that from myself. I'm not separating myself away from that fan base. I still see that myself, but it's that mentality of you have two wingers. In the middle, you've got a guy who wins the ball. You've got a guy who's the playmaker who spreads it. Up front, you've got the big man, little man partnership.
Yeah.
So you may have the big target man who wins the balls, and then the guy who kind of mops up from the other stuff. And so I think we're still thinking of that mentality for a front two. And the interesting thing is we do have that front two because it looks like the banana bread that Gary Monk was working on in lockdown has become a fixture in the Monk household. They want it every week now. So 3-5-2 is the thing, really.
It's gone from the fancy banana bread to our sliced white bread now is 3-5-2. We've got wonky slices.
The sourdough starter is the starter, you could say.
It is. And we don't have butter anymore. We have olive oil and balsamic vinegar. I think that's interesting. I suppose that what's hard to marry up is the style of play that we are capable of and playing. Because the way that Monk has almost universally played, his Wednesday team has played, has required a big front man. And at the moment, we don't seem to change what we do, even we don't have the personnel to suit that. And you could argue that everything after Christmas was a failure to either adapt at the managerial level or for the players to adapt to not having a big man to hit consistently. You can play without a big man. I mean, Man City are one of the most successful teams, they've got the record points total in the Premier League, and they did that without a big man striker. It just so happens they had, wonderful players throughout their defensive midfield.
You're saying it's a big manless City.
A big manless City. Because once they let Dzeko go, they truly had no second option. They had just had two little guys with the options up top. So you certainly can play that way. It's just I wonder whether it requires a level of movement and consistency of passing that I don't think we get, particularly out of our back line. I don't think we get enough. So I presume we're on our way to getting a striker to lead the line, a more traditional front man. To that end, the other bit of news during the week was the squad numbers.
Oh yes, I'm really glad you brought this up, Rich. I've got a lot of ruminations about the squad numbers, which is fun.
Ruminations. Okay, well, I think that talking about strikers and things that stand out, there's no number 9, which does sort of make you think that that's a gap in the squad that we're still trying to fill.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number 9 to come in. That's a fairly obvious one. But I'm intrigued now by your ruminations, Luke. Can you share some of your missives?
So I guess the interesting thing is that we know that Kieran Westwood's on his way out. We're actively kind of looking. It was interesting that I really appreciated Gary Monk's tact and diplomacy and handling of that question when he was asked about Kieran Westwood. So he talked about it a little bit at the beginning, where saying and it almost seems to say that's something that we're looking at doing, of actively making roads for Kieran Westwood to leave Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting. I like the fact that he deflected and then put the focus on the positive of looking at the 2 young keepers. So, because I guess there's the interesting thing now is one of the stories that's kind of coming into this game, and something we might talk a little bit about as part of the mix of analysing today's game, is who is effectively our number 1. But by doing that, effectively, we've said, so there are 2 ways of routes of looking at this. There could be the route that genuinely Monk is still looking for a number 1. I also think as well, the thing that I appreciate of those 2 keepers, Dawson and Wildsmith, keeping their same numbers from last season is still basically saying that this position is alive for both of you, and he's not damning any of the 2. So I think it's a really good move to have, even though it galls me as a fan, and especially I'm sure that me and you both follow, I know there's a Twitter account called Squad Numbers, which is just about kind of the batshit world of squad numbers that we live in now, with inflated squads and moving away from the old mentality that numbers 1 through 11 are all taken. Not having a number 1 at the club in terms of squad numbers is weird. And also, we don't have a number 3, we don't have a number 5, we don't have a number 6, we don't have a number 9. There are the some of the not really prime numbers, but squad prime numbers, really. That
they would have been the prime numbers in the past, wouldn't they? They would be the ones. I mean, they're not. And 9 is a really coveted one, obviously, but it's strange. It's strange to see all those gaps, the holes in the Swiss cheese of the squad numbers.
Did you think it was interesting seeing Kachunga take 45, which was obviously historically Nando's number?
I did think that was interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's ludicrous. Hagen and Kachunga are so far away from the rest of the numbers.
I also found it interesting that all the 20 numbers are taken. 20 through 29 are all taken.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's odd, isn't it?
It is odd. I thought about that fun world of, is Windass 18? Is that right?
I think 18's a fun number to have, isn't it, for Windass?
But also like the stupid world we live in of players who'd be like, well, I couldn't get 9, so now I'm 1 plus 8. That equals.
Yes. Who was it that somebody did that, didn't they?
They did. They put a plus in between, didn't they? I don't know.
Stankovic or somebody like that. It was somebody at Inter Milan, I think.
Some foreign jobber. With the greatest respect.
It might have been Batistuta. I'm sure he did it at
I think it was, yeah. It feels like such an eccentric European term. You know what I mean? How glad are we that we're outside? We've left. We've left Europe. Anyway.
But do you think so? I would take the fact that 9's missing to mean we're looking for a 9. But then I don't necessarily feel that with the other positions. So 3 traditionally would be a left back. Mm-hmm. 5
maybe
and 6
so,
would be a defender and a midfielder.
Yeah. I mean, we're linked with Sanderson.
Yes.
I don't know. I still
think of a rumour.
I mean, in terms of, we can do a quick audit here, Rich. What are you hoping for the next transfers? I know what I have in mind. I'll put this to you first.
I think obviously bare minimum we need ace. An out and out striker. I don't think I'd love to be wrong, but I'm past the point of thinking that Rhodes will suddenly become the man we need him to be. And I know that Monk traditionally likes a pretty big front man to build things around. That's generally the way he likes his teams to play. So I think we need that. That's sort of, there's no question about that. I would probably like to see another centre back at the very least as someone that can cover those. If we're going to keep playing three centre backs, we need a bit more cover there, I think. And I do feel like we probably need another holding midfielder.
Interesting.
But so what's on your shopping list?
Agree with you out with that striker. I think I'd probably agree with you with another centre back. We need someone to replace. I think we need another winger. We need another winger /
Murphy replaced
/ modern day wing back, basically. But especially after today, it made me think that we have some options, but we need a few more. We need another one. So basically, that's the whole. That's the mentality that we have: is we need to score goals. We need to replace our two top goal scorers of last season, which are Stephen Fletcher and Jacob Murphy.
There was a statistic they flashed up on Sky Sports. I think we've lost 40 goals from the squad since last season. Because if you add Murphy and Fletch to Atty, and then I think they said something like 3 other players, and they had 3. But that's a lot of goals.
There's a lot of goals to replace, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting for me because I think they'll play different positions, but I sort of feel like Izzy Brown, Kachunga, and Windass between them could be that kind of Josh Murphy type, but it's a different. They're not going to be playing that same right wing slot, I don't think, although the right wing back slot. But I think they can bring and make goals, all of those players. It's just how they work in. I'm intrigued to see how it all fits when people are back. If everybody was fit and kind of ready and raring to go, what would the 11 be? I'm sort of intrigued by that.
Yeah,
because I think I'd have a hard time picking it.
Do you think that is the perfect point to tip off into looking at today's game and looking at that lineup?
I'm happy to do that. I
don't think there's any other news that we need to cover.
No.
Cool. Let's do that.
Okay. Well, so obviously, this is the first competitive game of the new season, taking on Walsall away in the League Cup. And we set up in the 3-5-2, but not with a recognised striker.
Yeah.
So the back three, Dawson was in goal. That's obviously, for the time being, that's whoever ends up in goal is noteworthy. But I think he started the game against Leicester and he started today. It's maybe fair to assume that he's currently sort of just ahead in the polls of
that's
who gets
really interesting, because but also you're looking at the mentality of thinking. There's also the mentality of thinking, hey, I want to see more of these other players. So that could be the second point for basically Dawson to be number 2 as it stands right now. And obviously it's a League Cup, and so typically you think about.
Well, that's it. You do have a cup keeper nowadays, don't you? Generally,
you do. So I don't know. And then I was wondering at the end of saying, is the reason why we picked Dawson because he's better with penalties? Maybe. Did Monstradamus look into his ball and knew what was going on today?
I don't know. It was a bit of an odd lineup. So we had a fairly sort of familiar now back three of Tom Lees in the middle, and then Burner and
no Palmer because he's on international duty, right?
Yeah, Palmer on international duty, so he's not one of those three, and he's also not playing wing back, which I think he could do either. I think I'd rather see him. I'd be sad if we lose Palmer as that right-sided centre-back because it seemed to work so well for him.
I know. I really liked him in that position as well.
Yeah, and I do wonder if we found a better formation of those wing-backs towards the end of today's game, although I'm conscious it's Walsall and the first game in months and months for them. But we don't want to touch on that too much. But we had Odebajo on the right wing-back position, Kadeem Harris playing left wing-back, and then a midfield three of Deli Bashiru, Luongo and Bannon. And then up top, Adam Reach and Izzy Brown, which was a weird combination.
Yes. And it reminded me of those games where I said, it looks, our strikes are terrible, so why don't we just go 4-6-0?
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing, because going back to talking about fans who've said, it's weird that we don't have these players aren't out-and-out strikers, so they're not strikers in my book. But the flip side of that is, and especially looking at someone like Jordan Rhodes, I mean, you ideally want someone better than who Jordan Rhodes is right now and where he is right now. But you'd want a striker who'd actually add something else to the game.
Can I just, I made a note about this, and I feel we've mentioned his name a few times, and I think he just deserves a bit of acknowledgement. I don't know if you got the same shot as we did on Sky, Luke, but Jordan Rhodes looks incredible with his shirt off. Like, unbelievable.
Well, it's one of my notes from that substitution when he stripped off on the sideline is that, him and Windass are really vying for the Wednesday swimwear model of 2020-21, really.
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to make that decision as who's going to model the new Wednesday swim trunks when it comes around to next summer.
Too thirsty, Luke. I couldn't keep saying his name without, speaking my truth. And yeah, incredible. Not a scrap of fat on that young chap. He is just bulging with muscles all over the place. He even had some of those gutters that I'm not going to say the name of. It's unbelievable.
Those gum cutters?
Those gum cutters, yes. The love that dare not speak its name. The love of Jordan Rhodes without his shirt on. I'm sorry. Right. I'm sorry I cut you off in the middle of a burgeoning soliloquy, I'm sure.
Sure. But I mean, that's the thing is that, you don't have a recognised striker, so that's worrying to look at. But then also you think, well, Reach is a player who really should be here, there and everywhere and have different things to add to proceedings. Izzy Brown's a very creative player, as we know. So it would work.
And both are decent height. I think they're both 6 foot plus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the thing is, it would be nice to, and I'm sure there have been occasions where, the collective response to a team sheet has been, oh, crap, no strikers. It would be nice to have a few more examples of, well, you said that, and then X happened. Because I think more often than not, it's been sort of what we saw today, which is 2 players who don't really look like they know what they're supposed to do. I think Reach has been tried up top probably 10 times or so now across different managers, and I think he actually works really, really hard. He just doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. So I'm sure he's knackered and he's got his feet up now and sort of deservedly having his cup of tea or whatever. But it just never feels like he's in the right situation or the right place so he does a lot, but it almost exclusively goes to waste. And then you always get that moment where I have no doubt that sort of moment where Harris sort of squirreled through a couple of chances and cut the ball across the goal line in the second half. I know Jordan Rhodes would have been stood there and tapped it in, and Adam Reach is kind of like behind 3 men looking on longingly as the ball gets kicked away. There's always going to be that moment where just having that striker you carry, that's where they would, you'd hope come into their own.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have that natural instinct. They don't have that drive to get to the middle of the goal and wait for things to develop. So the game, pretty much all the way through, we almost exclusively had the ball. I don't know what the possession stats were, but I'd be surprised if we had less than sort of 60-65% possession. It was almost all Wednesday all the time. Very little from Walsall on the ball, although maybe you could argue they looked more dangerous when they got it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first half we were very much in complete control of the game.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that for maybe some of the fact that we weren't offering a great deal up front in terms of there seemed a real lack of cohesion in the final third. It seemed disparate up front.
Yeah.
But I was going to say for the negative of that, the positive of things was that we looked incredibly solid. I know it's Walsall, but
yes,
it looked like we could have had 5 games and Walsall wouldn't have scored.
The only moment where we looked, we got rattled slightly was the ball that kind of broke past Iorfa's. I think Iorfa should have nodded it away and he missed it. And it ended up with Lavery in a pretty much a perfect position. I don't know why he dallied so much on the ball, but he really had a free shot if he'd if he'd bothered looking up and taking a shot on time. He just sort of looked at his feet till he got tackled. But that was the only moment. But I agree. I think that we were remarkably unruffled today by anything. I've looked at I've found a place with the possession now. So 67% possession, which feels about right. There were spells of 10 minutes or more where that Walsall just did not touch the football. So I think on some fronts there was things that worked. It also meant the fact that Walsall sat all the way back meant there was no space in behind, so that made life quite difficult. It meant that Reach and Brown, with their relative pace, weren't able to kind of stretch their legs and do much in that regard. I thought Odebajo was quite unlucky a couple of times.
Yes.
We didn't get replays of it, but I thought...
Yes. Well...
I thought maybe that penalty on the 10th minute, I wasn't sure whether he was offside or not.
Yes. I said it looked like it was, but I mean, we don't really have any focus on the coverage to whether it was or not.
Yeah,
the thing about Odebajo, Rich,
wasn't it? Sorry,
we have different feeds. I had Paul Walker doing the commentary,
right.
and this is a bit lesser. I know there's a bit more drumming up a story with Sky Sports. Did I miss? I don't know if it was a ceremony at the beginning of the game where the linesman christened Moses Odebajo was offside.
I know. I don't know.
I don't understand. I thought the referee was fine, even though a comment I've made about the referee is that he looks like a child with a mortgage. He gives himself 5 minutes every Sunday to feel smug about having more of a deposit, but then he goes back to the stress of playing with Lego. I thought they were harsh with Moses because I didn't think he was offside that much. I thought maybe one of the 3 occasions, but like the 20 minutes, he was offside 3 times.
Yeah, which if he was, then that's a bit disappointing because there was clearly openings there, but he was too keen. But it felt harsh, and the camera angle was that one. Sometimes you get this in kind of older, small stadiums. It sort of was like an isometric. It was a terrible camera angle when they tried to show a closer view of whether he was offside or not.
Do you want to know what I've randomly called the Walsall Stadium?
What did you call it?
The Brewster's Ballpool Stadium. I just want them to use the icon of that bear just munching on some bread or whatever it is. Did you enjoy the fact, obviously it's next to the M6, did you enjoy the corners where you don't have to watch Wednesday defend, you can just watch some National Express buses bobbing in the background?
Oh yeah, there was a couple of zingers that the commentator had that he'd clearly stored them up. He'd written them down last night because they're going to be so good. And so he sort of said, Wednesday, this close to the M6, stuck in congestion and unable to find that fast lane. Was one of them.
There we go.
And then midway through the second half, he said about Izzy Brown, and then sort of clearly like turned to his co-commentator and went, Izzy needs to get busy. And it was like, again, tick that one off. Absolutely nailed it. Yes, Izzy needs to get busy. But yeah, so incrementally, I think the better team. We looked pretty solid. We just weren't able to spring that trap, which we were looking to do. Harris had a lot to do. He looked really bogged for a lot of the first half. I
thought the disappointing thing was because of Odebajo being christened offside with some holy water before the game. I didn't feel in that first half we saw much from Harris. I didn't think we really had much. We didn't have much from the wing play, which is a big thing for Wednesday, for our sides. I mean, that meant there was a lot through the middle, and I like the 3 in the middle. Of, Luongo. I didn't feel like I saw much from Luongo. Maybe he's doing a holding role. Quiet sort of game. Bannon, and I enjoyed Fizz. I enjoyed Deli Bashura today. Thought he was good. So I was going to say, this would be, if it was an album, a compilation album called Now That's What I Call Preseason Football 47. I'd look at with being HMV Rich, looking at the track list, and I'd give you a little elbow poke and be like, "Look, Rich, it's got the Saturday's B-side on that you didn't mind."
Oh,
So
dear. Yes.
another christening of this, another name if it was a product would be I can believe it's not better. To be fair. But I was going to say, in a weird way, I think it was summed up by the 23rd minute. There was a great moment with a great strong hold off from Deli Bashuru. He surged forward, went on a bit of a mini surging run, and then he just kind of scuffed a shot wide. That's kind of summed up the game.
You could kind of see the moment in his mind. He thought, I'm going to score on my debut. And then proceeded to roll it to the keeper 25 yards away. Yes. But I was generally pleased with him. I thought there's lots of to use a very American phrase. There's lots of upside, I think, to him. Yes. You know, he looks strong. He looks like he's got a bit of a turn of pace. I know in his interview when he signed, he mentioned that Yaya Toure was a real inspiration for him. And I think it's fair to say you can see a bit of that in his play, in that Toure always had that feel that he could, at any moment, he could kind of just grab the ball and drive you 10, 15 yards forward and sort of try and make some things happen, almost of his own volition. And I think we saw that a few times, particularly second half. He was coming deep and trying to drag us up the pitch with a bit of pace and quality. Didn't always work. There was one moment where he sort of passed it to their fullback and sort of put us in a bit of a scramble. But by and large, I was quite pleased with that. I think in terms of Harris, sort of as we saw several times last season, I think they were doubling and tripling up on him, because any time he got a run at that right fullback looked like a League One right fullback, in that he's a centre back that's playing right back. And at any time I thought Harris got a run on him, he seemed to need to foul him to deal with the situation. And I thought he was very lucky, because he got his yellow card, and then quite soon after that he sort of hip checked him in the penalty area, I think. And I thought, you know, on another day, that's the sort of thing the referee might have had a real look at, because you can go shoulder to shoulder with someone, but sometimes a hip check you can get in trouble for, I think. But yeah, so that meant that there was that space for Odebajo if we moved it quickly and when we moved it quickly. But that's why it was so disappointing that he did seem to keep getting caught offside. And I think then they were sort of wise to the fact we were trying to do that, spring that trap on them. So they made the winger drop, or the wide midfielder drop back even further to try and keep an eye on him, which led to that second half where Walsall basically barely left their own half for the whole duration. I think one of our best chances was that Harris low cross early in the second half.
Yes.
He seemed to have the bit between his teeth early doors and took on his man a couple of times. And then there was a good Odebajo cross, which Harris himself, the ball sort of fell to him. This is sort of 58 minutes. Apologies if I'm skipping over bits for you. Call us back if you need to, but I don't remember very much happening. But yeah, that was an Odebajo cross that the keeper sort of flapped at, and it ended up with Harris, who took his time, had a look around, smelt the air, measured his shot, and just poked it straight over the bar. And that was just before Penny came on for Odebajo, and they swapped round. What a revelation Matt Penny was when he came
Very
on.
much so. And I mean, just after that note, I think it was his shot from outside the area where he kind of cracked one, and that kind of felt like the first chance of the game. Almost, even though there were previous chances, it felt like we're off and running.
First shot, I think.
Very much first shot on target, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think about Harris curling that one over, which was disappointing.
Yes. The usual Harris. Everything looks lovely, and then he kicks it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought Penny, it was nice to see. It was a little bit Murphy-esque in the way that he played that. He was hitting his crosses early. He wasn't, him and Harris were an interesting partnership together when Harris moved out to the right, because Harris loves to push all the way to the byline, then kind of chip his crosses in. And really, Penny was just trying to get a foot or two on his man and whip a ball in from no matter how deep. As long as he was in their half, he was trying to kill the ball in. And a couple of really nice crosses in. Unfortunately, the sort of best chance was the one that he kind of played straight to the keeper. But again, that was once Rhodes had come on, and he's sort of like, why on earth is Jordan Rhodes outside of the box when we're breaking 3 versus 3? I don't want him on the edge of the box. I want him in there to try and get the goal. But yeah, of a fairly dull game, I think Matt Penny's half hour or so really was a real highlight. Really stood out. Rhodes, we then had the wonderful shot of Jordan Rhodes with his shirt off. He then came on for Fizzy, as I'm calling him. And what was interesting to me with that was then Izzy Brown came to life because he was playing in the position that he's meant to play. We had a couple of lovely moments from him, including the one where we had a header from Penny. We had the one where he just missed Penny on the cross as well. But
yeah. I was going to say from my notes that 80th minute, that was the one which Penny couldn't quite convert, which you'd kind of really want someone else on the header. But again, that's the problem that seems to be with a lot of... I was talking about Wednesday missed chances, and like, if only the X-player was on this one instead.
Although another tick in the sort of pro column for Matt Penny. I liked that he was there. As a wing back, whether you technically should be trying to get on the end of things in the box, I don't know. But I liked that he was getting forward and trying to attack the ball in that space. We needed somebody to. Yeah. Was there a chance a minute later where I think Brown did something that I my comment was, I can't quite remember what happened, but my comment literally was just not sure what Brown was thinking there. I think he should have shot, and he ended up playing across. That's the one where I sort of said he missed Penny, because I think he was trying to sort of do the same kind of cross. Although it would have been one of those where it, probably would have hurt Penny's nose if he'd connected, because it was really thundered at his face. But it was behind his face.
Not to kind of jump ahead and look at. We'll do a quick. We can rattle through some player ratings pretty quickly at the end of this if you fancy, Rich.
Yeah.
Feels weird because it still feels a bit like a preseason game,
Yeah.
But I was going to say, for what we kind of signed up for and what we felt that the stats were, Izzy Brown did exactly what he says on the, what it said on the tin regarding Izzy Brown. I mean, he created a lot of chances.
Yeah.
Whether how many of those you can think of, like, that's a guilt-edge chance and we missed that one. But in terms of, like, stats-wise, like expected chances or whatever you want to say, very much so, Izzy Brown.
There's a thoughtfulness to his play which I really like. He seems to make time for himself. Again, nothing came of it. I think it ended up being an offside, but there was a free kick that Bannon thumped straight into the wall. And even just Izzy Brown's chip into the box from there, he didn't just thump it or volley it. He kind of hit it with some backspin, so it kind of hung up in the air, and because we had all those big guys in there, it should have given us a good chance to try and create a bit of chaos. And I just like that, he's not just hitting and hoping. There's thought behind his actions, and that's a nice thing to see. And that's how you make the best of situations. So yeah, I totally agree. I thought there were things in a very drab affair. There were things to be quite pleased about and look forward to, I think. Certainly, and the new guys by and large looked the part, as you say, did what they did as advertised, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing to see. And this is not by any means an easy... On Sky, the narrative was pretty much that they were a bit annoyed that we didn't just come and steamroll Wassall out of the way. That was the main narrative that they were going with. But I think it's a pretty thankless task. You're going to a team that's 2 leagues below you, hasn't really kicked a ball in anger for 6-7 months, something like that. When there's a lot of expectation, but we're also in the middle of a pretty major rebuild. So so sort of like there's an expectation on us which I don't think is befitting of Sheffield Wednesday as it stands today. And I think we sort of did quite a good job in those proceedings. And as you say, unless it was penalties, we weren't going to lose today. It was just the fact that they really only had one thing that they wanted to do, and that was defend their box. we didn't necessarily have the tools to stop them doing that, to break through that. It might have been the sort of game where an Atinuyu might have been quite nice to have to call upon, but that's neither here nor there. He obviously would have been on international duty as well in the squad for Kosovo. But I think it's churlish to come away anything other than sort of slightly pleased after today's game.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's promise. No, there's promise. There's dynamism. There's a dynamic nature to what's going on. We look a lot more live, I think, now, even in a pre-season game against lower league opposition for a cup game, than we did for large spells of lockdown period. I'm thinking Fizz gives us quite a bit different, as does Izzy Brown, with that creative elements. There's the more to come, I think, is the sentence that sums things up.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And we proceed into the next round because we won the penalties in a pretty convincing manner. Yeah,
and that was, I think, outside of Penny, the positive you can kind of give for a fairly middling match all round with some fair sparks. But I think we've got to give some real credit to Dawson for making that save.
Yeah.
Which probably took the turn of the momentum and put it in our court, really. Walsall looked a bit like a dog that had a newspaper bashed over its nose. After that, they look a little bit defeated at that point.
Yeah. And, good sort of mental strength from him, because he couldn't have been more beaten than the first one. He was like completely the opposite side of the goal.
Yes.
So to then get up and save the next one was pretty good stuff. But yeah, so 4-2 the win on penalties. All good penalties from our guys. Yeah, we did the job. I think that's the thing. You've got this is a tricky. It's always hard to go away and do, unless you're going to absolutely blow a team away, which requires them to play with some drive to attack of their own. By and large, these are not particularly fun games to be involved in as the bigger team, the expected winners. So yeah, come out with some real sort of glimmers of hope for the future, and we won. That's the main thing. Okay, so do we want to do some player ratings?
Yeah, let's just give a quick kind of run through. Dawson. Probably gone with a 6.5. For large spells of it, didn't really have much to do. It's still kind of Cameron Dawson. I still think there's some moments where it's giving us a little bit like, I don't know. Maybe, could do with a bit better composure and confidence. But I mean, he did well with what he had. I think he gets plaudits. Maybe I could bump him up to 7 for the penalty save.
I think that would be my inclination. I think.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have very much to do, did he? Do you know? This is a weird thing, but I sort of think he looks like he should be really, really good, Dawson. When they were stood the two keepers together.
Yes.
And I'm just like, he looks like a proper athlete. The other guy looked like a gangly, of course he's the goalkeeper.
Yes, there was very much a story in that shot of them two kind of side by side walking away. Dawson kind of very confidently just supping on a bit of water or Lucozade Sport or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it looked like he'd been told, the Walsall keeper, that he had to go help his dad out with clearing some leaves in the yard or something. It had that feel about it.
Well, they only just sell the scale extract.
Exactly.
I know that's a weird. It's almost the opposite of Moneyball, because I know that part of the kind of Moneyball revolution in baseball was to get away from this thinking of, he's 6'3" and he's blonde and handsome, so he must be good. But yeah, I thought, I mean, hopefully that he can sort of take things away from that as well. He looks proper. Maybe he's got a jolt of confidence in him. Who knows? But yeah, so okay, we'll go for a 7 for him. What about Dominic Iorfa?
Dominic Iorfa again, that composure. Let's go with 6.5.
Yeah, fair enough. Tom Lees.
Tom Lees, let's go with... Lees was better than I expected. I would say, for this proceeding. Definitely in that first half looked like a lot more composed and a lot more confident than I think I've seen in a while. Him just kind of handling the ball at the back.
Didn't we?
He did, yeah. So I'll give a 6.5 as well, sure.
Moving on to Burner, I would say maybe something Tom Lees can take confidence from is that clearly Burner was their trigger to start the press and not Tom Lees, which, you know, in a way, there's the opposition has scouted our back three and decided he's not the weak link, which is quite nice for Tom, I think.
Mm-hmm.
In a weird way.
Burner did have a moment where he nearly gave the ball away, which was worrying.
I thought he had two, actually. But that, as I say, I think that was obviously the trigger for their press, was when Burner had it. And he nearly got caught against Leicester. And I do worry about him. He sort of thinks he's a better footballer than he actually is.
Yes.
At times.
Yeah.
He was all smiles afterwards, after nearly getting caught. But he lost his shoe, didn't he? But yeah, it's something to watch, isn't it? It does intrigue me with one sort of looming figure that we've not seen anything of so far is Dunkley, and I wonder where he figures in the mix. I wonder if he's a starter when he's fit. I don't know.
I would hope so, because I don't like seeing what we have right now.
Yeah.
Centre back. I know, obviously, as like they said, Dunkley is behind on fitness, so that's why he didn't feature, which we kind of felt we knew from Monk's talk pre-game chat.
Yeah.
And also Palmer's on international duty, so that's all we have. Well, we also have. Let's be honest. We do have Mr. Joost van Aken.
We do
on the bench.
–
closer to a professional first team appearance from Joost van Aken for a long time.
Yes,
since he crapped his pants so heartily at Hillsborough for us losing against the Pigs 4-2.
Oh dear, yes. I wondered, I mean, at what point do we read into the fact that he's still there and he's got a good squad number, Van Aken? There was a bit of a rumour that he was told he could leave, but then we also heard that same story about Moses Odubajo, and he's very much a part of things.
Yeah, but I also think we've also heard a little bit recently about how Van Aken has impressed in training. So
I remember some of the passes he played. Mm-hmm. I remember being. I mean, there were good bits to Van Aken playing for Wednesday, and defending was not one of them. But he's got a bit of a cannon of a left foot for passes, which could be a weapon in the arsenal. Does three people give you enough cover for his defensive frailties? I suppose that's the question. Having three at the back. Anyway, there's nobody else that naturally plays that left side, so there are reasons to keep him around, I would think. Mm-hmm. Where did we get to? Did we give a score to Bernard?
Let's give him a 6.
Give him a 6. Moses Odubajo.
I think I'm going to go for 6 as well for Odubajo. I mean, it's so on my commentary, I had Paul Walker doing which is a lot better than the other guy who's I talked about on DAZN before.
You have.
Who I'm not a fan of, who sounds like he should be doing something else with his life.
Maybe he has.
Maybe he's gone to drive a bus somewhere or something. I don't know. Maybe he's taking off Chris Wilder as the next shift. Who knows? So the weird thing with Odubajo was, I mean, it's an interesting thing to talk about in regards to our wingbacks, which I know we're going to get onto when we talk about Penny coming on.
Yeah.
But Walker said about Odubajo said it's a shame he's gone off because I feel he's been like one of the brightest players for Wednesday. I mean, it's interesting having a player with that pace in that position who has that industry, because I feel like he does cover a lot of ground and he does have a lot of athleticism to do a lot. You know, there's a lot of mobility there. It's just the kind of end product that comes from Moses isn't particularly good.
Arguably, he was 3 offsides away from being man of the match.
Yes. And obviously a number of those offsides I really don't think were offsides.
Yeah, but if he wins a penalty and puts a cross in for another goal, for instance, which could easily have happened, then you're like, oh yeah, that guy was amazing. He's got to be first choice right wing back out of the guys we've got. But he, rightly or wrongly, was called offside, so he didn't have that tangible impact on things that maybe he could have. But I would agree with Paul Walker. I thought he was our bright spark, definitely for the first half.
But then the difficult thing is that he was offside so many times.
Yeah, of course.
It didn't feel like it was his day, to be fair, to be generous. So I think a 6 is fine for him.
Yeah, I think 6 is fine. He was also one of my sort of standouts from last week against Leicester as well. So maybe he's kind of turned a corner. The worry for him always is the defending side of things, and the way he was playing today meant that Iorfa was basically playing right back and right centre back, and Odebajo was playing right wing, which is how I like him defending.
See, I would say the more worrying thing is the offensive side, because I want someone with more attacking nous and more teeth in those positions, because we found him in different positions. It's not like he's a great crosser of the ball. I don't think his decision-making is very good in the final third. But he has the athleticism and the ability to get himself in those positions.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. This is the difficulty of how it goes, really.
Yeah, no, it's tricky. It is tricky. Let's do the other wing back, and then we'll do the midfield three. So we started off with Kadeem Harris on that left wing back slot.
6.5, I think. Probably slightly better than Odebajo, but then with what he had to do, but then the difficulty of being defended against quite a bit. Still created one of the bright chances. One of the top chances of the game with that rollback.
I thought his cross was good, which is a kind of plus point. That sort of roll across the box or cut back or whatever the cross should have really resulted in a goal. But his finishing was he had quite possibly the best chance of the game and didn't hit the target, which is really frustrating. If Jordan Rhodes could pass on one thing. For the eye-watering investment that he's received from Sheffield Wednesday. What Jordan Rhodes does so well is he hits the blooming target. And so many... I think, different levels, goalkeeping is different, is one of the biggest ways you can tell lower leagues from the better leagues. And I think goalkeeping is one of the ways that you still, when you watch women's football, it's still quite a distance away from men's football in terms of quality. And in part, goalkeeping is a big chunk of that. But championship level and around there, hitting the target will get you a long, long way. You don't need to curl it into the top corner. These are not wonderful goalkeepers by and large. Hitting the target will get you a goal or get you another chance. Doing what Harris did is pretty much unforgivable. Poking it tamely over the goal. Just hit the blooming target. Keep it low and keep it between the posts. And honestly, the world will, it will seem a sunnier, brighter place for you. This will be a revelation. Just hit the target with it. It's so frustrating.
I don't remember that song from the musical of Oliver. Just get the ball on target and the world will seem a sunnier and brighter place for you.
The sun has got his hat on. You hit it between the posts. The sun has got his hat on because the chance you made the most. Right. Excellent. So that midfield three, we feel maybe Luongo was the deepest of the three.
Yeah, and I'd probably go for a 6, maybe for Luongo. It
was one of his quieter affairs, I think.
That miss at the 73rd minute.
Yes.
It was a lovely cross from Penny. He did everything right, and it was such a bad scuff wide.
He went with the wrong foot, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He thought the goal was the other side of that post.
Yes.
And it would have been fine.
I'd forgotten about that miss. That was a howler. What about Bannon?
I'd go for a 6.5 for Bannon. I still think still did a lot more. Still a very Bannon-esque game. Still did things. Yeah. One comment I made right at the end is I know he took a really bad corner at the end, and I said we need to get Bannon off of corner set pieces.
Yeah.
Not good.
His free kick was terrible as well. So
Yeah.
Please. We've got people that can do this now.
No, I know.
I think
It
Penny
feels
and
like
Pont are much better than him. Obviously Brown. I think I'd probably rather Harris. The only free kick we've seen Harris take, he hit the bar with. Almost anybody I want on set pieces ahead of Bannon.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yes. So then Deli Bashiru was the last member of that three in midfield.
I'd go with a 6.5 as well, just to kind of be within this kind of ballpark. I thought he was bright. He had some moments of real industry and surging forward. I liked what you said earlier. I wanted to add, but you were kind of mid-flow, so I didn't want to stop your momentum. But while I talk about momentum, like the whole thing you said about Yaya Toure, he looks like a player who can drum up some momentum from nowhere. And just he gets the ball, he takes a couple of long, pacey strides, and there's that kind of confidence and speed with it.
Yeah.
And I hope we see more. I know he's against lower league opposition, but I'm hoping he grows into that and we see more of that talent against, teams in the championship. Yeah. So I hope he gets a bit more time to have a bit more time on the ball and do that. But he looks good, and he can also thread a pass as well.
Definitely. Yeah. I think for him, not a like for like comparison, but just another guy striding out from the back with sort of not just pace, but a power about the way he moved. I'm thinking about Majid Bouguera, and I think he's got to have the mentality that sometimes he's not going to work and he can't then go hiding. Like sometimes he's going to get the ball nicked off him and it will kind of send us into a bit of a scramble. But we as fans, when we get the opportunity to have a word in the players' ears in terms of being in a stadium, we also need to sort of buy into the fact that probably 80% of the time, this is going 85, maybe 90% of the time, it's going to be positive for us when he grabs that ball and sort of pushes past that first man and tries to make some things happen. But particularly while he's young and learning, there's going to be he's going to get the ball nicked off him occasionally. He's going to put us in occasionally. But we kind of need to just roll with the punches a little bit. Because that was the thing with Bouguera. He got horribly exposed sometimes, but 9 times out of 10, it was just brilliant because he dragged the whole team forward single-handedly. So I can see that sort of energy, that drive in him, and we quite exciting. A lot of things about his game. But I agree, 6.5 seems fair today. I'm going to go for Reach next. The sort of a muchness of those front two. But what about Adam Reach?
6 feels generous. I'm going to say it's not.
Like I said,
I don't know.
Visibly working hard. You can't accuse him of not putting a shift in. He had nothing to show for it. The team had nothing to show for it. He always seemed to be in the wrong place all the time, which is what happens when he plays up front. He's got no instinct for it. We need to stop this experiment. It's not fun. We've tried it enough. Everybody's tried it.
But I mean, where next for Reach? Because I don't think he's...
I don't know.
I don't think he's quite a wing back though, which is funny because I felt like he was a midfielder, he was a winger, he was a left back, but he's not the all three of those in one position of a wing back, right?
Amazingly considering where we were last season, I honestly sort of start to think, should he be gone? Like, I suppose the thing is we want other ways to play because that we're now playing 3-5-2 as a consistent formation, and I think it's important that we stick to that and learn how to play that. But there will be games where that's not possible for whatever reason. So you can thin your squad of players that aren't useful right this moment and then feel lacking in other moments. So Reach does a lot of those things on a good season that we were liking from Murphy. Goals from nowhere, good deep crosses, things like that. Reach does a lot of those things. He just doesn't do it at wing back. But if we end up playing a game where we need to sort of throw caution to the wind or something like that, then he might be a useful guy to have around occasionally. I also think he could probably play that kind of Izzy Brown type role as the forward sort of prong of a three in midfield, but he probably does that worse than Brown, Kachunga and Windass. So it's tricky. It is tricky with him. Presumably he's got another year after this one, or is this it? Is this his last year?
I was thinking this is it, but I could be wrong. We did sign him to a massive contract. I mean,
I
we
know.
spent a lot of money on him.
I know. And I think
He's a £5
till
million
last year,
player. We spent money on
yeah,
5 million, and he's looked 5 million quite a lot of the time, and he's looked promising. And sometimes even we had a season where we felt, I think he looked like a £10 million player.
yeah,
Now he looks like we can't give him away.
I know.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a headache. Let's go for Izzy Brown. What score are you going to give him?
I'm going to give Izzy Brown 7. I think that was a lot more like it in terms of players, and everything he gave and added to the team today was positive. I can only feel that like a bit more fitness and a game and a offering a lot more for us when we get into next week, where we're starting a league campaign where we're losing 12 points up from the off. It's gonna be a better stage for him, I think.
Yeah, I also think, to his credit, he looked markedly fitter this week than he did last. So
that's really good.
He's clearly putting in the effort to get up to speed, which is really good. Just to run through those subs then. So Penny came on at the 60th minute for Odebajo.
We've got to give Penny a 7.
Yeah.
Which I think is marked for the game it was, and him being a sub and coming on for 30 minutes. I saw that Sky gave him man of the match. I think I'd agree. I
would also agree. Yeah.
I think just an absolute revelation. It was nice just to see him on the bench and to just think that he's a player who seemingly has come back and has a future, when didn't feel like that. It felt like we'd forgotten he was a player that existed, that was ours and on the books. And
now
he's back, and now he came on and really did the business, and just absolute night and day in terms of this game. Just the best player in the park.
It was tantalizing, I think, and to me, I sort of wonder, particularly as he did it all last season at a decent level, I wonder why he's not our first choice left wing back going forward.
Maybe he's getting into that conversation now. Granted to be true that basically Monk has seen a lot less of him than he has with a lot of other players we have.
Yeah.
The ever-present Harris, Odebajo, who's gotten a lot of minutes, despite some of his faults and errors.
But to me, he's almost unique in, I just don't think we've got direct players like him.
No.
He's really he's motivated to get goals and make goals in a way that, I don't know, I think lots of players are happy sort of making pretty patterns and keeping possession. And with Penny, he seems so single-minded, and this was something I loved about him when he was having his first sort of dalliance in the team as well. He just seems to want to, my aim when I get the ball is to progress things. I need to move the ball forward, get us in a position where I'm putting the ball in the box, or I can have a shot myself. And he's got the quality to do both of those things pretty consistently well. Again, in a way that I just don't know that we have elsewhere in the squad. I don't have faith that Harris can whip in an early ball, because I've never seen him do it. He doesn't seem to want to do it or like doing it. So I can only imagine that's happened from a career. His game is built on pushing to the byline and doing little chippy crosses, because that's what he's good at. Mm-hmm. Whereas completely the opposite, Penny's game is, you've got a really good left foot, make the best use of it you possibly can. I totally agree with man of the match. I hope. I suppose the thing is, there's a track for young players, which is the kind of Alex Hunt, like you're bottom of the pile, but you're in the rotation. I hope, from what I've seen of Penny in his two stages, although they've been fits and starts, I just hope he's not. I hope he's on a faster track. He has always looked and played, and to me, like a first team player. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see him given the chance to kind of grab that mantle and make it his own. Okay, let's. Then it was. Sorry for that. It's exciting to see a kid like that. I think he's special. I do. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting to see a kid like that come through the ranks.
Yes.
Not a tidy little footballer. Not all right. He'll make a job of it. But he's gifted. Yeah. Anyway, Windass came on for Reach, the 66th minute.
Windass was okay. Let's go with a 6.5. I don't recall a great deal from him. Things seemed to
I think it's
step up a
fairly
bit
anonymous.
in that period, which felt because of a lot of the substitutions. Maybe to be fair, and maybe it was just Penny. I'm going to be honest.
It could well have been. I wonder if he was just a little bit better at leading the line than the other two had been. So it did allow us to be a bit more progressive with things. But yeah, that might, as you say, it could easily just have been Penny's influence, just wanting to get things going every time he got the ball. What about the last John Rhodes then brought his magnificent body onto the pitch.
Let's go the 6 for Rhodes.
Yeah.
I wanted to see him because hell,
you've got eyes.
Exactly, Rich. I wanted to see him play purely just to give him a grotty look at his Poundland washboard abs. No, you still think for someone that we've invested so much money in, so much time in, while he's still at the club and while we're playing and starting a game where we have no out and out recognised striker, you really hope that something's still going to come from him, right?
Yeah, I think to Rhodes' credit, I feel like we would have played better if he'd started. I don't know what that's based on.
Sure.
But there's a discipline. That the problem with Reach is he just doesn't know what he's there for.
Yes.
And there's a discipline I think Jordan Rhodes would keep the discipline of, I'm here as the striker. What I've got to do is find gaps between the centre-backs and hope the ball comes my way. And that, in and of itself, is harder to defend against than Adam Reach, who is just kind of, what I'm going to do is run as fast as I can around, sometimes near the ball, sometimes away from the ball. But you're no threat. You're no influence on the game. The discipline of sort of sticking to your task, I think, would have put it in a slightly better stead. Maybe not massively better, but it feels a little bit insulting to Rhodes that he didn't start today. I just worry in terms of like man management and things like that. And maybe we had a word. The Monk had a word with him and things like that. But mentally, that's got to be quite a blow. And we always talk about the old the awful old cliche about strikers is about confidence players. That cannot be good for your confidence. To look at that team sheet and think, yeah, I'm not even in a team with no strikers, I'm not the striker. Anyway, Penny crowned man of the match. I think that's fair enough, and lots of little glimmers of hope and things to be quietly optimistic about going into the season proper next week. Anything else from you, Luke, today?
Just as a slight aside, just looking back at one of our old kind of Sheffield Wednesday expat players. A note I made about Caelan Lavery. Caelan Lavery looks a different player. And by that, I mean, like his face has been replaced with someone else's.
The years have not been kind, have they? He looks like a tough go-round, does Caelan Lavery.
Looks like he's left football and he's been doing manual labour for 30 years.
Or just staring into the abyss, whilst the abyss stares back at him.
Very much so. And I hate to... I don't know. It's different, and it's difficult for players who are young and then so promising and exciting and pacey, and then things don't happen and they get an injury.
Yeah. And
then that kind of has to redefine who they are again. But it looks a long time away from who he was. Against when I thought about like who is. And it made me think, actually, I'm like, just thinking about the Stuart Gray 6-0 defeat of Leeds, where he got a brace.
Yes.
And he did his awful Eagle celebration.
Yes.
And thinking, well, Tom Lees is still in the team. He's the only player I think would be left from that time. So I wonder if they know each other. That's been the change of Wednesday. But as he's dropped down the ranks and he's now a League 2 striker and didn't look too threatening. The player who looked more threatening was the player who scuffed the penalty against that Dawson saved. Was it Gordon?
Yes.
Who had the free header, which was only the mild worrying moment. Yeah. He had a free header he soared over in the second half. A little bit sad to see Red Deer's finest, Caelan Lavery, just looking very much a shadow of the player, and
I'd
maybe his
forgotten,
face looking a shadow of his face's shadow.
I'd forgotten that he turned us down when he joined United.
Did he really?
That's what it says on Wikipedia, and there's no higher source of news than Wikipedia.
Remember that being a thing.
Lavery joined Sheffield United after turning down a new contract from City rivals Wednesday.
I know it was a difficult period because I felt like if it wasn't for that injury, he would have had more of a presence in around Wednesday's team at the time. But also, we were in the Championship and they were in League One at the time, right?
Yes, yeah. It was the season after our promotion that he left.
But it also felt a little bit like his days were numbered because of he just lost that momentum that he was grabbing with those goals against Leeds, and I think he scored against Birmingham as well. I think it was. And it reminded me a little bit. Do you remember when we went up? And do you remember Chris Lines was looking sharp in pre-season?
Yes.
And got a really nasty groin injury.
Yeah, that's a big what might have been moment, wasn't it?
It was, and I think about that, maybe that kind of sliding doors moment for Lavery. But definitely it felt like basically we were like, we don't need you right now. We don't need you anymore, really.
Yeah.
So I imagine if we did offer him a contract and he turned it down, it was probably a bit derisive, I'll be honest.
Could well have been.
I don't think it took much for Sheffield United to gazump us on that one. You know? I remember a really hilarious thing someone posted on Al's Talk with like a Unitedite. It was like, oh well, he's actually like really is one of the best players, and Carlos didn't like him.
Yeah,
like,
he
bullshit.
played 30 times that season afterwards for United. Interesting. Then completely fell off for them as well.
Yes. And I thought it was funny, like the narrative of him coming and being like, you want to do well against your old club, which of course he's going to say, but it felt maybe a bit angled, like it felt a little bit like there's a little bit of sour grapes still there.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, potentially.
Sad. A little bit sad.
Yeah. But that's the thing with young. You can show promise. You can show, and he looked like he had real shine to him early doors.
Mm-hmm.
But it's grabbing those moments and staying injury free. All those things are very tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we shouldn't get so maudlin about the passage of time. We are a week away from the season kicking off in earnest, and I think for myself, I'm warming to the task of this season, and roll on Cardiff City. Let's see how we go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say cheerio, Luke.
And the same to you, Rich. Have a good one.
Have a lovely week, and I hope folks at home have a lovely week, and we'll speak again.
Excellent.
Cheerio.
Let's do this.
Bye.
Right.